Well, hello everyone. It is my absolute pleasure to speak about the Rick Bartow artist books at the Beinecke Rare Book and Manuscript Library. I would like to thank George Miles, curator of the Beinecke's Western Americana collection, for the invitation to participate in the program. Also, my many thanks to the staff at the Beinecke for their behind the scenes work during this pandemic to keep us connected and creating access to the vast collection. Rick Bartow was a friend of mine, and I miss being able to call him and visit with him, especially to see his new works at the Froelich Gallery in Portland, Oregon. I would like to extend my gratitude to Rick's family and his numerous friends who have their own beloved memories and connections to his art and music. My mother and I traveled to Newport, Oregon for Rick's memorial service, and the people in his hometown expressed nothing but love for him. Rick Bartow was a prolific artist who worked in pastel, graphite, charcoal, acrylic, mixed media, and bronze. He was a mark maker, always drawing and possessing a pencil in his shirt pocket, ready to create or add another mark, a line to a drawing. When you look at his work, there is motion and emotion. There are personal stories and universal ones of love, struggle, hope, and loss. Bartow was an enrolled member of the Wiyot tribe, a native nation of the Humboldt Bay region of Northern California. Born and raised in 1946 in Newport, Oregon, Bartow drew heavily for inspiration on the wildlife of his Pacific Coast home. A keen observer of the ravens and coyotes, eagles, he took great interest in the animals' movements and respected them as teachers of life and behavior. Some of his drawings incorporated blended human and animal bodies, often in a state of transformation. Bartow explained that, "I often think in the drawings, it is more of an ecological statement, that we are no greater than the animals are, and they are no greater than we are." These human animal figures continued throughout his career. In 1969, Bartow earned a bachelor's degree in art education from Western Oregon State College. Soon afterwards, he was drafted and served 13 months in the US Army during the Vietnam War. Assigned to a signal unit, Bartow spent his after hours playing guitar at hospitals for the severely wounded. The Army awarded Bartow a Bronze Star for his musical service to injured soldiers. Nightmares and feelings of survivor's guilt followed his wartime experiences, and Bartow returned to art making as a form of therapy. For the next 4 decades, themes of recuperation and survival reappear in his outpouring of drawings and of his monumental carvings. Bartow was the recipient of many honors, including the Idle George Fellowship in Native American Fine Art, and having one of his cedar sculptures displayed in the Jacqueline Kennedy Garden at the White House. He had numerous solo exhibitions in the United States, Canada, Mexico, Germany, Japan, and New Zealand. His art is in the collections of 90 museums and galleries worldwide. Bartow was the subject of monographs and numerous articles. In 2002, art critic Bob Hicks wrote a profile of Bartow in the Oregonian and noted that the making of an artist, of any human being, is careful balancing of contradictions, a reconciliation of things that don't fit. Bartow is an easy, generous, open man, and he has been bleak in places. He knows great joy and great sorrow. When the two resolve, they find a state of grace. Bartow passed away on April the 2nd, 2016, at the age of 69 from congestive heart failure. As I mentioned, Bartow was Wiyot, an indigenous nation of the Humboldt Bay region of Northern California. His Wiyot ancestors traveled north to the Oregon coast due to disease, slavery, and genocide. In February 1860, the Wiyot gathered in Tuluwat, their village, for their annual world renewal ceremony, a sacred ceremony where they put the world back in balance for everyone. While they were sleeping, however, white men carrying hatchets and knives murdered between 100 and 200 people who were sleeping. The perpetrators were never charged, and the remaining Wiyot had to take refuge in other areas. Bartow's family went north into Oregon, and while he was not raised around his Wiyot community in his early years, he had many deep friendships with Native nations in Oregon, especially the Siletz tribe. Bartow created this monoprint entitled Tuluwat, Bluejay, and Island in 2006, referencing the tragedy of 1860. This work is not in the Beinecke collection, but it is an important work illustrating that cultural connection to his ancestors that never stopped. I first met Rick Bartow in early 2002 when I was a curatorial research assistant for his solo exhibition at the Smithsonian's National Museum of the American Indian in New York. Luckily, the museum purchased one of the works on view, entitled Raven from 2001. It is acrylic on masonite board. If we were able to see this work in person, you would be able to see the marks he etched on the surface and the brush strokes throughout. The National Museum of the American Indian also commissioned Bartow to create We Were Always Here, a pair of monumental carved cedar poles. They are on permanent view at the DC Museum location along the National Mall. You can see the detailed image of the scalloped carving work on one of the poles. The other photo is from the dedication. Bartow is in the middle, standing next to the museum's director, Kevin Gover, on the left, and artist in Wintube cultural bearer, Frank Lapina, to his right. I doubt if many artists can say that their art is in the collection of 3 Yale institutions. Bartow has artworks in the Yale Institute of Sacred Music, the Yale University Art Gallery, and the Beinecke Library. In 2013, I curated an exhibition entitled All That Remains, Material Remembrances in Love and Loss at the Institute of Sacred Music. It featured the artwork of Native artists, including Rick Bartow. The Institute acquired one of the artworks, entitled Trombild, from the exhibition, and Bartow came to the opening in 2013 and sang a song for everyone. Bartow's drawings sometimes incorporated blended human and animal bodies, often in a state of transformation. Trombild, a German word that can be translated as vision, shows one such transformation of a human and a deer, the center image cast in ghostly white and sprouting antlers, with his human hand reaching outward. In Bartow's works, the corporeal and spiritual realms are one. The Yale University Art Gallery has 7 works by Bartow, all works on paper. They came into the gallery through Richard Brown Baker, a Yale alumnus and art collector who amassed more than 1,600 works from the post-war period. He bequeaths a majority of the collection to the Yale University Art Gallery, and luckily those included 7 Rick Bartow works. These works are very unique as they date to the 1980s, before Bartow's work reached more museums outside of the West Coast. The Beinecke has Baker's papers, and there is a file on Bartow. Here you'll see that Baker saved gallery show announcements for Bartow. At that time, he was represented by the Jameson Thomas Gallery, which had a gallery in Portland and then expanded to New York. His papers also included handwritten notebooks where Baker jotted down his visits to galleries and outings with his friends in the art world. There is an entry for his visit to Portland in 1985, where he visits various galleries. At the Jameson Thomas Gallery, he records seeing these, quote, weird drawings by Bartow and purchasing 3. Baker also writes quotes from Bartow's artist statement, including writing down that Bartow said, "I employ the figure extensively, distorting it for both visual tension and to heighten the expression of a statement." Baker concludes by saying that Bartow's work reminds him of Egon Schiele. The papers also have inventory lists, and here you'll notice Rick Bartow at the top, number 1256 in Baker's cataloging system, followed by Christos and Basquiat, to name a few. I have images of 4 of the Bartow works on paper from the Baker collection. I had no idea that these were at Yale until 2014, when the gallery's senior fellow at the time, Marissa Nakasone, sent me a document listing all the native artworks in the gallery's collection. Marissa had studied at a university in California and knew of Bartow's works. I was overwhelmed by them and wished that Bartow would have been able to see them when he came to Yale the year before. Nevertheless, the gallery is now very aware of these remarkable works on paper. They were on view in the Levin Study Gallery at the gallery in 2016 through a proposal written by my colleague Sequoia Miller and me after Bartow's passing. They are also currently, some of them, in the latest Native art exhibition at the Yale University Art Gallery. I would like to draw your attention to the drawing on the right entitled Mel 1, which was not in the 2016 installation at the gallery. I asked Bartow about this work, and he told me that Mel was an ex-girlfriend of his brother who died from cancer. Bartow has depicted Mel almost as saintly, with outstretched arms. Her hair is shorn, probably falling out due to chemotherapy. From her eyes, there are lines, possibly tears, falling to her breasts. The breasts are discolored, and the X-ray on the right shows abnormal sections. There are two phantom hands coming in from the left and right sides of the drawing, symbolizing an embrace. This painting is from 1989. Unfortunately, cancer would take Rick's wife, Julie Swan, as well, who died from breast cancer in 1999. The Beinecke has 3 artist books, Bartow, in its collection. First, 8 prints and 4 variations is from 2009. It contains 8 dry point prints and 4 variable edition hand-colored etchings. The cover is kozo paper with kashishubu, or a traditional Japanese dye, which comes from unripe persimmons that are then fermented and aged. The other papers in this book are oguniwashi, okuwara washi, and mitsutama. The binding was done by Saichi Hiroshima, a master printmaker and print artist living and working in Tokyo, Japan. Rick and Saichi worked together very often. They first met in 1991 and then had been collaborating since 1997. They produced dry points and monotypes under their collaborative press name, Moon and Dog Press. Here you will see the printer's mark on the artist book. 8 prints and 4 variations contains various prints and etchings assembled into a book. Bartow hand-colored each one. Bartow described his style as gestural configuration, whereby he would make marks and then refine them into figures and images. Often he drew vertical and horizontal lines through and around his composition. Here you'll see more of his bird figures and the animal-human transformations. The second book, 10 Little Indian Boys, is also from 2009. The cover is embossed and stained paper from Mexico, from Francisco Toledo's paper shop in Oaxaca. The pages are all handmade papers, such as Mexican amate and Japanese kozo paper. Saichi Hiroshima completed the binding. The book contains 10 unique drawings and inscriptions. The drawings are made with graphite, Prismacolor pencils, and Japanese white gouache. The portraits are inspired by heritage auction catalogs featuring portraits of American Indians, such as these Allen and Ginter small cards from 1887 that were inserted into tobacco and cigarette boxes. But you will see that in Bartow's book, the focus of the portraits is on the face and the eyes of the men, not their clothing or other pieces of regalia. The Allen and Ginter cards focus on native material culture. Next to each portrait, you'll see surrounding the figures are headdresses, pipes, breastplates, the regalia and clothing that were collected like war loot, and they become parts of private collections and museums, reminders of what was taken away from native peoples, making it difficult for indigenous people to continue their life ways. In the Bartow portraits, the men stare back. Their clothing is not to be objectified and othered. You must look into their faces. Bartow often drew circles and crosses to focus the viewer's attention to a certain area. Circling and other marks can be calling your attention right to that element of the work. The third book, Bosch, is a hand-bound book containing 13 dry point prints, each artist proof mounted on pages. The book cover is a mate paper from Mexico. They were again printed and bound by Seiichi Hiroshima. Bartow hand-painted each print with watercolor and gouache. And I just think this is just so beautiful. I had to show you with actually the cover, and then you can see that the Bosch, the title is underneath that. The book is named in reference to Hieronymus Bosch, the Dutch Netherlandish painter from the late 15th century. Bosch produced several triptychs. Among his most famous, of course, is The Garden of Earthly Delights, which depicts paradise with Adam and Eve and many wondrous animals. The center has earthly delights with fruits and animals, and then the right is hell with depictions of punishment and torture. Bartow's print on the left is entitled Bosch Song. The one on the right is entitled Bosch Bird. So I will say this book actually has titles for the prints that are inside. They are playful and strange works. Certain parts of the prints are colorized, such as the shoes and the clothing. The one on the left, you'll see that there is a man sitting on a bird's head, and the bird's mouth is open, which makes you wonder, with the title of Bosch Song, what sort of song, probably something not melodious coming from the bird. There are also two other prints, Old Raven on the left and Self-Looking on the right. Bartow drew many ravens during his career. The raven, as you know, is a talkative bird and very intelligent. But raven is also a central cosmological figure among many indigenous nations of the Northwest coast. Raven is a teacher and also a bringer of light. I don't think it is surprising that Raven in Bartow's last book is now an old raven. He's been on a long journey. The print on the right, Self-Looking, is a self-portrait. You can see Bartow's distinctive nose. He stands a bit hunched over. His hands are clasped together. He has less hair. Bartow, like Raven, is older now. He has been on many struggles and journeys, including the death of loved ones and personal health issues such as strokes and congestive heart failure. Sometimes Bartow would draw attention to the eye, in this case with the single eye over his head. I feel this is a reference to insight and vision gained over one's lifetime. There are several tiny marks leading from the eye and penetrating below into Bartow's body, a wisdom coming through. The title, again, is Self-Looking, which is also the last page of this book. Bartow painted the prints by hand 2 weeks before his death on April the 2nd, 2016. This book was a gift from the Bartow estate to the Beinecke Library. It is a wonderful book, and also kind of, if I may, a wonderful bookend, so to speak, in relation to the early works that are also at Yale from the 1980s. And I'm going to end with this image from Rick Bartow's studio and all of his wonderful paintbrushes and paints. So thank you very much.